So welcome everyone today. This is the last session of the day for our Academic Integrity Awareness Day for staff. Today is a guest speaker that we're very fortunate to have. I have a bit of information about Rowena Harper, but I would say before I say anything, if I were to say Rowena Harper is, it would be a very challenging sentence to finish because busy definitely comes to mind. Lots of research in different areas, but with a particular focus on academic integrity. So her role is actually the director of the Centre for Learning and Teaching at Edith Cowan University in Perth, in sunny Perth. But she's also been at the University of South Australia, as well as spending some time in Canberra as well for University of Canberra. So you oversee teaching quality, learning support, and learning technologies. You co-led the OLT Strategic Priority Commission with it Project Contract Cheating and Assessment Design, Exploring the Connection. You're also past president of the Association of Academic Language and Learning for multiple years. So you're many things, but really your focus is on academic integrity research, both nationally and globally, and sort of its impact on the higher education sector. So a really pertinent thing to be talking about at ANU, because today that's what we're discussing, is the impact of academic integrity across the board. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I know, Rowena, you'll probably unpack a lot more about your background, but I'm really looking forward to this. It's rare that you get to host a session and just sit back and relax and learn something. So I'm really excited about it. So welcome everyone. We can see people still coming in, but I'll just get started so we can hopefully finish within the hour. Okay. Trying to make my screen system work. So just a quick note that we are recording today. So that's so those who can't attend or those who want to rewatch it can have access to that video. So if you don't wish to be recorded when we come to the question time at the end, you don't need to turn on your video camera. All good. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am today. I know that Rowena is on her own lands, but just to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Yamri people of the Canberra region, and just pay my respects to elders past and present, and just really appreciate the land that we're on today. I come from far away, so I do really like to acknowledge the lands on which I am. I was, also raised on unceded Algonquin territory, and it's just really important, to acknowledge where we are sitting and the privilege that entails. All right, so Rowena, would you like to take over and get into your session? I can unshare.
Great, thanks Tara, and I've got some slides to share, so I'll just take a second to...
Yeah, just gonna unshare myself. Of course, it's going straight to the thank you slide. It's not wanting me to unshare. Excellent. I don't want to share. There we go. Stop share. Just decided to freeze on me. There we go.
Okay, so I'm going to get my main screen up as slides. Fabulous. Thanks so much, Tara. And I'm so pleased to be speaking with you today. Really pleased to be part of this Awareness Day on the topic of academic integrity. It's a topic, that I've been very interested in for many years. And thanks so much to Marianne Deaver for inviting me to be part of it. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands from which I'm speaking to you today, the Whadjuk and Wadandi peoples of the Noongar Nation. Noongar country stretches right across the southwest region of Western Australia, where my university, Edith Cowan University, is based. It encompasses Perth, or Boorloo, as it's called in Noongar, and also Bunbury, shown here in the image, where EC's southwest campus is located. In my presentation this morning, which should be around 45 minutes, I'm looking to cover three broad areas. But before I do, I thought it was important to foreground the perspectives that I bring to the area of academic integrity. It's an area I've worked in for over 10 years, and it's also my main area of research. So I speak as both a practitioner and a scholar. I've led student support, staff development and policy development in the area, and together with my late mate, Professor Tracy Bretag, I co-led the Contract Cheating and Assessment Design project, which was a strategic priority project commissioned by the Australian Government's Office for Learning and Teaching. And what this really means is that my thinking is informed by empirical findings, but also the very messy realities of fostering integrity and managing misconduct inside complex institutions like universities. So pragmatic rigour is really where I aim to come from. And in preparing for today, Marianne suggested that a good place to start might be a summary of where we are at in the national conversation around academic integrity. I totally agree. So this is where I'll spend most of my time today, on an overview of what we know based on the 60 years of research into academic misconduct. Based on this research, I'll then provide an overview of what the landscape looks like for universities. What is it exactly that universities need to manage when they're establishing and reviewing policies and procedures in academic integrity? Then finally, I'll provide an overview of the current best advice for fostering integrity and managing misconduct in universities. And if I've planned well, I'll provide good coverage of all the key information and leave time for Q&A. So what do we know? What's the current conversation on academic integrity in Australia more broadly, globally as well? Well, in Australia, the current focus on academic integrity was really ignited by the My Master scandal back in 2015, which is the story that brought the issue of contract cheating to widespread public attention. A service called My Master was found to have provided cheating services to up to 1,000 students from 16 universities, mostly on the East Coast. There are countless websites like My Master, but this investigation by Fairfax named the universities where the assignments were likely submitted, prompting TEXA, our national regulator, to approach universities for a summary of how they were managing this emerging problem of contract cheating. The My Master scandal was useful for bringing attention to the issue, but it framed the problem in ways that have been a bit unhelpful. Firstly, it framed the issue as a scandal, something shocking and unexpected, implying that this problem was new, and in many articles, that cheating at university was becoming worse and more widespread. Secondly, it suggested that contract cheating was a particular problem in essay assignments, prompting many to argue that we should get rid of essays and go back to exams. Thirdly, it framed the problem as related particularly to international students, and while this is somewhat supported by the empirical research, the issue is far more complex than it appears on the surface. And finally, contract cheating has drawn so much attention in the research and discourse that you could be fooled into thinking it's the only problem universities face in the area of academic integrity. So let's look at what some of the research says about these things. Is contract cheating a new problem? Well, cheating in general, of course, is not a new problem. As long as there has been assessment, there has been cheating. This picture, for example, shows a miniature copy of a Confucian text that was used by students during the Ming and Qing dynasties to cheat on civil service exams in China. Students were supposed to memorize texts, but some would make these miniatures and sew them into their clothes, in addition to a raft of other cheating strategies. And in fact, let's not pretend that people only cheat when they're students. Humans cheat, and the psychology literature is replete with research that explains why that's the case. Contract cheating, more specifically, is also not a new problem. The first large-scale study conducted in 1964 across 99 colleges in the US found that 29% of students reported copying from other students in exams, and 14% reported having turned in papers written entirely or in part by another student. Both of these we would frame broadly as contract cheating. On the question of whether contract cheating is a growing problem, this is slightly more complex. It's clear that the supply side is growing. Technology and new business models are enabling the proliferation of cheating services, and it's now a buyer's market. It's a huge business globally and in countries like Kenya, and it's a lucrative job for graduated students who can't find employment elsewhere. Australian universities have recently been provided with a list by TEXA of about 2,000 confirmed contract cheating providers, and these are just the ones that target Australian students. So in addition to being able to outsource work to family and friends, as students always have, students have consumer options available to them now to outsource work in other ways. We don't yet have strong evidence that the demand side is growing, however. In the study I led with Tracy Bretag, where we surveyed over 14,000 students across 8 universities, just over 300 students said they had obtained an assignment with the aim of submitting it as their own, and slightly more reported cheating in exams. Social desirability bias means that people are often hesitant to report taboo behaviours in a survey, so these numbers are likely to be lower than in reality, but they're still considerably lower than the 14% found by Bowers in 1964. A more recent study used a survey method that aimed to counter the social desirability bias of ours and other studies, and on that basis estimated that 7.9% of students buy and submit assignments from commercial contract cheating services, and 11.4% outsource assignments via file sharing sites. And these rates are significantly higher than our self-report data, but they're still lower than the 14% found by Bowers. So I've not yet seen strong evidence that suggests assignment outsourcing specifically is getting worse. It is worth noting, however, that a third study from 2015, led by Dan Rigby, surveyed students with hypothetical questions to find out how many students would consider contract cheating given the right conditions, for example, the cost, the detection risk, the penalty, etc. And using the data from that study, combined with the data from the Curtis study, in this lovely little method suggested by the researchers who led Texas academic integrity workshops a few years ago, we could predict what you can see in this graph, that 50% of students won't contract cheat under any circumstances. 17% have outsourced their work in one way or another, and on that basis, they're reasonably likely to do it again. But a further 31% of students are what they called cheat curious. I love that term. That means they haven't necessarily cheated, but would consider it given the right conditions. And many of these conditions are under our control, and I'll touch on through the session. The perception that contract cheating is largely a problem in essays has been one that researchers have been quick to debunk. So it just takes one look at the different segments of the industry and the services they offer to see that it spans all kinds of tasks, all disciplines, all assessment formats. And the business models have become particularly adept at servicing time-limited assessments, with providers ready and waiting online to answer questions and complete tasks as soon as they're posted. So time-limiting assessments is not a good strategy for combating cheating. In fact, our study showed it's likely to increase it. And the sites use a range of persuasive features which both entice potential users to trust the service and also lead naive students to believe that these are legitimate services that support learning. The sites are so professional looking that many students are fooled. In our study, we also compared across a variety of assessment types, student reports of cheating, that's the orange bars, against staff reports of detection, the green bars. And while students reported cheating most commonly in exams, staff reported detecting cheating most commonly in text-rich assignments. So exams aren't inherently secure, and it's a lesson that we shouldn't use our own experiences of detection as a measure of the frequency of cheating, because we don't know what we don't know. The other misconception that the MyMaster scandal helped to perpetuate was that contract cheating was a distinct problem among international students. Now, to some extent, this is valid. In our large study, students who speak a language other than English, or LOTE, L-O-T-E, were statistically more likely to have engaged in contract cheating, and this finding has been echoed in other studies in the field. However, there are other factors. Males, younger students, and students from business and engineering have been shown by various studies to engage in more cheating behaviours. And in our study, students who perceived there were opportunities to cheat, or students who were dissatisfied with learning and teaching, were statistically more likely to have engaged in contract cheating alongside LOTE students. And finally, it's vital that all the attention being paid to contract cheating in the wake of MyMaster doesn't distract from the other challenges we face in fostering academic integrity, and there are many. Paraphrasing tools in which students can paste any text, a journal article, a web page, or another student's work, and the tool will rephrase it for them. Students thereby avoid the cognitive work required to read, comprehend, and paraphrase, and text matching tools usually don't pick up when this has occurred. Translation tools, which work in the same way but can translate text from any language into English. Again, text matching tools are typically not useful here. Artificial intelligence writing tools. Now, these will be the next frontier for us. All the researchers are saying so. All you need to do is input a topic area, and the tool will generate original text about that topic for you based on millions of other articles on the topic. The student wouldn't even need to write, and it can generate references for you as well. The quality is getting better of these tools, and I'm certain there are already students submitting work created by these tools at universities now. Of course, plagiarism and collusion haven't disappeared, and they still represent the most common cases of academic misconduct by far at most institutions, including high schools. And there is evidence to suggest these problems are worsening, as you can see in this recent headline. And this is for reasons I'll illustrate shortly with some qualitative data that I've been analysing. We're also seeing now that the scale of contract cheating goes beyond single assignments. Fully vertical business models can now set students up with people to complete an entire degree for them, whether online or on campus. And for students who do engage in contract cheating, there's a risk of blackmail. There are many reported cases of students who've been asked to provide money to contract cheating providers in exchange for their silence about the student's academic misconduct. So, what does this research evidence indicate we need to keep in mind in response to the scandalisation of contract cheating? Well, students have always cheated, and there's no evidence yet to suggest that serious forms of cheating are increasing, so there's no need for widespread panic yet. However, the industry is sophisticated, pervasive, and persuasive. No assignments are immune. We can't design it out of tasks themselves. Misconduct behaviours differ by cohort and by discipline, so this means that context matters, and both old and emerging threats to academic integrity must be kept in view. And universities are not detecting anywhere near the number of cases that students self-report on surveys. This is a big one, and it'll probably be the next push in the sector to improve detection rates at universities. Just as an illustrative example, if ANU was detecting cheating at the rates reported in our study, that would mean around 420 cases of contract cheating and 630 cases of exam cheating each year. So I think it's interesting for every university to do this calibration exercise. What proportion of the likely cheating are we picking up? So the research I've shared so far reflects quite a bit of what we know about cheating in Australian universities. One limitation, however, is that there's been very little qualitative research done with staff and students. So our knowledge has been constrained by what we think we already know, which of course informs the survey questions we ask and how we design those questions. I want to share now data that better reflects the staff and student voice that was gathered as part of the Contract Cheating and Assessment Design project. And to frame this, I'll just take you into that study in a little more detail. So the project ran from 2016 to 2018, and it was co-led by Tracy Brettag and myself at the University of South Australia. And it included the research team that you see here from 4 other universities. The qualitative analysis was delayed, and that was conducted this year by myself and Felicity Prentice, who was a PhD student of mine and Tracy's, and is now a PhD student at ECU. We had 5 research questions that we felt would provide the data we needed to investigate the issue of contract cheating. We wanted to look at prevalence. We wanted to look at staff and student attitudes towards and experiences with contract cheating. We wanted to understand the factors that contribute to contract cheating, and we wanted to look at the kinds of assessments that are associated with contract cheating and also with its minimisation or prevention, exploring particularly the possibilities of authentic assessment. We then designed 2 surveys to generate our core data set, a staff and student survey, which we ran at 8 universities and also 4 independent higher education providers. The response rates are here, and it remains the largest study in the world to date on contract cheating. So we've got very good local data available to us in Australia. In addition to the surveys, we had a couple of other data sets, as you see there. I'm pointing particularly to the phrasing of the qualitative items in the student and staff surveys, which I've shown there. It was deliberately open, very broad. Is there anything else you want to tell us? And that's the data I'll step you through now. So what did staff tell us? Well, in the quantitative data, we could see that staff were not unfamiliar with handling contract cheating. 67% of the staff had suspected it at some point, the primary signals coming from discrepancies between the work presented by students and their prior knowledge of the students' linguistic and academic capabilities. However, of those staff, 44% said they had not followed institutional policy to report their suspicions of contract cheating. And this was because they either saw contract cheating was impossible to prove, they said it was too time consuming to pursue cases, and some said they didn't feel supported by their line managers or university management to pursue the case. And the qualitative data followed on very much from these quantitative findings. Staff told us that they believe cheating at university is aided by university priorities, which create an environment in which academic integrity suffers and cheating thrives. In addition, they discussed strategies for minimising contract cheating and ways that contract cheating could be detected. Finally, they shared their opinions about why students may seek to cheat in higher education. At Code 1, staff discussed their concerns with how the sector operates, its business models. They described a strong emphasis on the student as a consumer rather than a learner, and there were 3 distinct issues raised. The first was efficiencies, in inverted commas, in learning and teaching, that included depleted resources for teaching that are driving more transactional rather than relational practices, unreasonably limited time for marking assignments, a failure to recognise academic integrity work in workload models, and directives to modify the number, type and nature of assessments so that it becomes cheaper to run. They also said public-facing policies and procedures were at odds with the lived experience of dealing with contract cheating at the coalface. Reports of contract cheating prepared by staff met barriers in the process of escalation, including cases swept under the carpet or outcomes that were seen as too lenient. And peers and colleagues did not demonstrate a mutual commitment to dealing with contract cheating, so some staff felt they were alone in their concerns. Prevention of contract cheating was described in 2 ways: perceptions of what should work and strategies that people were actually using. Assessment design was proposed as a potential mechanism, along with better education for students in academic skills and ethics. Among strategies people were using, the most common was getting to know students, often via in-class tasks. The language at this code conveyed a distinct sense of collective effort in attempting to prevent or minimise contract cheating, so staff clearly saw themselves as having a role to play in prevention. Detection of contract cheating shared themes with prevention because getting to know students was seen as a detection strategy as well as a preventative one. Staff look for uncharacteristic work, a mismatch or a disparity between drafts and completed assignments, or in-class work and submitted assessment, or faltering oral language and perfectly flowing written language. Staff reported, however, that these observations were often not valued as evidence in academic integrity investigations. The perception was that universities seemed to prioritise the measurable and seemingly objective results of text matching tools, when actually similarity scores are limited in their capacity to substantiate cases. Of concern to staff was the lack of recognition of their professional expertise and judgment as evidence in academic integrity inquiries. Their content knowledge, familiarity with the assessment, and insight into the abilities of the student were not valued as evidence in the decision-making process. The 4th code contains staff views on why students engage in contract cheating. And it was interesting because the language about academic misconduct often evokes a criminological paradigm with terms like cases, investigations, accusations, charges, evidence, etc. But in contrast, staff spoke with real understanding and empathy about the conditions that might lead students to engage in contract cheating. So overall, staff very much see contract cheating as a symptom of the economic positioning of higher education. They're doing their best to prevent and detect cheating, and they sympathise with students who might engage in it, but they point to factors beyond their control, such as class sizes and dwindling resources for teaching and assessment, as the main drivers of the problem. Now let's have a look at what students said, as there are many parallels. Almost 5,000 students completed the qualitative item in the survey, so we had a lot of data to analyse. In the quantitative data, we'd found that 6% of students had engaged in one or more of the cheating behaviours. Exam cheating was the most common. 15% had bought, traded or sold notes, and 27% had provided someone with a completed assignment for any reason, and this might have been to provide them with a guide. And the qualitative data very much brings these findings to life. There was a notable silence in the data, and that was contract cheating. In total, only 17 students, or 0.01% of our sample, mentioned some variation of contract cheating. A further 3 students mentioned essay or paper mills, and here's one reference that included both. A relatively low number of students mentioned some variation of payment, money, or purchase. Contract cheating just didn't feature in respondents' language, and statements about commercial transactions did not feature significantly in what students said. We had a decent number of responses that expressed confusion about the questions on the survey, however. Specifically, students didn't feel that we were asking the right kinds of questions about cheating in higher education. They were concerned that the survey implied that contract cheating and other serious forms of cheating were more common than they perceived them to be. They also asserted that most of the cheating in higher education was not covered by the quantitative questions. Essentially, they were telling us that we didn't really understand cheating in higher education at all. So, what did students want us to understand about cheating in higher education? Well, a summary of what they said is provided here in the form of our coding schema. Responses could be described by 3 parent codes. The first is we share and work together, where students told us what tasks they share, how they share, and why. The second was universities influence our behaviours, with a variety of practices, including recycling assessment, assessment design, and failures to respond appropriately to academic misconduct when it happens. And finally, the third code, they cheat, and by they, responses referred to international students who respondents claimed outsource their work and rely on others to cheat. We'll look at each of these codes in a bit of detail. We initially conceptualised the codes visually like this, where students talked about we, you, and they. However, the responses drew a very firm line between the behaviours of domestic students and international students, and they said that these groups behave differently, but there's more to this when you look closely at the data. Students said they share material and work together on all kinds of tasks, and particularly online quizzes where they call out their own behaviour unashamedly as cheating. They do this to help each other, to learn, and to clarify tasks. And the data shows this is social in nature, not commercial, with recognised sharing norms. But the line between collaborating and cheating is contested in a range of ways. On universities, students said, you encourage us to cross a line when your assessment is recycled, unclear, unfair, or inauthentic. Moreover, we're disappointed when you don't penalise what we believe to be cheating. This is unfair. Respondents said they do not share with international students who are held outside their social constructs and believe they're more likely to outsource their work. To some extent, students understand the pressures on international students, but universities set them up to fail. Whereas domestic students are perceived to be operating within a social contract, international students are associated with behaviours that are synonymous with contract cheating. So let's look at what some of this looks like in the raw data, because it's very enlightening. Students said that one of the ways they share and work together is by sharing information, both vertically and horizontally. Sharing information vertically is when older students or older peers pass on their assignments, completed assignments, marked assignments, assignments with feedback, examples of assignments that got a good mark, including exam papers and exam question and answers, to students who are in the current year or students who are about to take the unit. So this is what we've called vertical sharing, year-to-year sharing. Sharing information horizontally is when students in the same class swap assignments, give assignments, share notes, show each other their assignments and discuss answers before submission. So students say they do this to share ideas and knowledge, to look at different perspectives. Other assignments also provide a guide, scaffold, and a reference to compare, to see that students are on the right track. And they'll also talk a bit about teaching and peer teaching through this form of sharing. Students said they also work together in ways that could be described as co-creation. In particular, students work together on two things. Firstly, online quizzes. A lot of students, literally everyone I know, said one student, will do online quizzes together. In a group, we complete parts, swap answers to one question for answers to another, and cooperate and collaborate on answers. It almost seems normal to cheat, and this data is beginning to be confirmed by other studies as well. Secondly, students work together on individual assignments where they get together to co-create. They hash out answers together. They feed off each other's ideas. And you see this varies between completely legitimate discussion to outright copying. Submissions are mixtures of cheating and own attempt, or a reflection of the student and their closest three classmates. So students told us they share both vertically and horizontally, and they work together. But why? What's the desired outcome? Or using a term that we might commonly use, what's the intent here? Well, sometimes students did say that they share and work together for the express purpose of cheating, and this was largely in relation to quizzes, but students also talked about intending to cheat on weekly quizzes, tests, in-class quizzes and exams. But the main reason that students share and work together, however, is to help each other. The word help and its synonyms was used most commonly at this node. Closely related to helping was learning, and students said that their sharing of information and working together provided support for learning in a range of ways. And finally, another related reason for sharing and working together was to clarify requirements, usually of an assessment task, because in their experience, instructions are unclear and practice or exemplar assignments are often not provided. Importantly, these behaviours are social, not commercial. There were only 6 references to sharing websites in the entire sample coded. Students talked instead about relationships, closeness, generosity. The behaviours they described were grounded in classes and cohorts, so the digital nature of some of the sharing is secondary to the social dimension. What was clear was that students' views about what constitutes academic integrity are likely to be deeply divergent from those of staff. The line between collaboration and cheating was variously unclear, unrealistic, or unreasonable. And where the intention was to help, learn, or clarify a task, students overwhelmingly judged any associated behaviours as not cheating, almost regardless of what they were. What was sobering was the extent to which students appear to be using other students' work as the basis for their own. Many people only do 2 assignments in 4 years because assignments are traded so often. Very sobering data. On to code 2, which was universities influence our behaviours. Students said universities influence their behaviours through recycling assessment. Assessment tasks are reissued, rehashed, and hardly change from year to year, so floating around are the same tasks. And because these tasks are shared so widely and likely sitting in front of a student as they're trying to prepare their own assignment, it makes it very difficult not to rely heavily on these existing pieces of work. Students also said that universities influence their behaviours through assessment design, in particular in exams. Students said they observed a lot of cheating in exams and don't see them as a relevant form of assessment. They're a hurdle to get over, not a meaningful part of learning. Students also commented that assignments are often designed to be easy to grade rather than meaningful, and more often than not, students don't understand how to approach them and experience a lack of support and clarity from staff. A final component of assessment design that influenced students' behaviours was group assessment. Many students observed that 1 or 2 students do all the work and the freeloaders cruise through and get the same mark. And they see this as, unfortunately, a form of cheating that is condoned by the institution, awarding of marks to those who haven't done the work. The most troubling findings in the data related to international students who were largely excluded from the assessment sharing economy described at Code 1. We didn't choose the name of this code without careful thought. But informed by grounded theory and using an in vivo approach, we wanted to use respondents' telling terms, their actual words, as much as possible to represent the data. Now, if a quote like this is taken at face value, responses like this could be read simply as evidence of international student cheating. Yet the language of the responses highlighted that this is a far more vexed issue. There is a racist discourse in how domestic students talk about their international peers that needs to be confronted. There was a we-they discourse that served to other international students, and we think this is an important finding that relates directly to the over-representation of international students in commercial contract cheating behaviours. Most commonly, respondents reported hearing other students spoken English in class, and on the basis of any deviations from standardised English, such as accent, intonation, pronunciation, or lexicon, assumed students were international and assumed that they must be cheating. And this is a clear example of what's called linguistic racism, whereby the categories of local and international are conflated, and students are then othered and excluded on the basis of their spoken English. Students also pointed to cultural norms, including competition, shame, rote learning, and differences in ethics as a reason for higher rates of cheating. And you can probably see some stereotypes about international students pervading some of these quotes. In the main, respondents said that international students must be outsourcing their work. But note in these examples how many responses acknowledge that they're not based in experience or observation, but on rumour, suspicion, and assumption. I've heard about people writing their essays. I believe that many international students utilise services online to cheat. I suspect. I have seen some. There's one observation. We did see some direct observation, some direct experience, but many of them took the form of the last, I think. Students also said that international students rely on others to pass. Respondents suggested that international students needed more help and sometimes approached others about their work. But students commented particularly about this in the context of group work, where international students, they said, do not contribute and submit copied and plagiarised work, the effect being that students have to do more work to compensate. Beyond the kind of some stereotyping and marginalisation that you can see in the previous comments, racism could also be seen in the many double standards applied across the we and they groups. Double standards are a typical marker in racist discourse. We help each other while they rely on others. We act with intentions that are largely supportive and conscientious, while they act with intentions that are deceptive. We cheat due to extrinsic factors such as university practices, while they cheat due to intrinsic factors such as English language proficiency and cultural norms. We are so close-knit, but we avoid having them in our groups. There is very little evidence in the data that respondents have had any genuine human contact with an international student, which is evidence of a significant failing in our universities to scaffold social and academic relationships between domestic and international students. So respondents had no sense of the intentions that underlie international student behaviours, intentions that they described so vividly for themselves. Students said that we share and collaborate in order to help each other learn and clarify tasks. But when they see international students engaging in very similar behaviours, they don't seem to assume that international students either share the same kinds of very human intentions. Previous academic integrity research has found that students' peer-to-peer behaviours and associated ethical norms tend not to extend beyond students' own social constructs, and our data indicates those constructs have a clear linguistic and cultural dimension. So I think this is a key takeaway from the qualitative data that we got from students. that previous studies have shown that a lack of access to peer networks can underpin a student's decision to use a commercial contract cheating service. And our findings provide critical insights into why it is that LOTE students are more likely to use these services. They are excluded from the sharing cultures that other students clearly rely upon. Given that work acquired from commercial services is often not submitted as purchased, but used as a guide or edited before submission, it seems probable that LOTE students are turning to commercial cheating services for the same reasons that domestic students turn to each other, to help each other, to learn, to clarify assessment tasks, and sometimes to cheat. So if we step back and we look holistically at the contract cheating and assessment design study, what did we find? Well, really what was emphasised across all of our data was that that contract cheating is a symptom of a wide range of systemic factors across higher education domains of sector, institution, educator, and student. So contract cheating is not simply a matter of students behaving badly or even of generational shifts in learning cultures. Trends affecting the sector and its funding models push down into institutions in the form of efficiencies like growing classes, shrinking contact time, and dwindling resources for teaching. This then leads to expedient teaching and assessment practices in which educators and students fail to form educative relationships. Students then get the impression that no one cares about their learning, and the mounting social and financial pressure they're under to get through uni and get a job can lead them to feeling like they have very few choices. So given all of this, what is it that universities have to manage? Well, TEXA now have an integrity unit, a unit that's funded to support universities in tackling issues like contract cheating. And they are very informed. They have built relationships with people like me and other researchers, and they're well aware of the current research in academic integrity. So this means universities need to demonstrate an awareness of all of this in their practices also. The higher education standards contain explicit guidance on what universities must do to meet the threshold standards to operate as a university. And these include things like policies and procedures, evidence of preventative action in mitigating risks to academic integrity, that students are given appropriate guidance on what constitutes good practice and given education around the development of those good practices. And also universities need to be attending to academic integrity in any relationship they have with a third party, an external vendor and on and offshore partners. In practice, this means that if TEXA was to look at what a university does, it would look for evidence of these things: institutional systems for monitoring, reporting and recording instances of academic misconduct. So this means recording and reporting on the number of and types of incidents of student academic misconduct. Detailed case notes that capture details about individual cases and how they were addressed. The extent to which the provider uses academic integrity breach data to improve practices in teaching and learning. So this means that reports, for example, need to be clearly minuted at relevant committees at the institution and department levels, with relevant actions recorded and followed up, and that academic staff in their roles have been provided with adequate training and support to ensure that they can demonstrate and foster academic integrity. So academic integrity really needs to be centred in organisational processes and continuous improvement conversations in the same way that the big metrics of retention, success and satisfaction are. So what can we do? So if we think about the research and we think about our obligations under the higher education standards, we really need to think about institutional strategies and strategies that work their way down to educator and student. And typically when we're thinking about strategies, we think across 4 domains: prevention, education, detection, and management. And this is a useful framework for thinking through what needs to be done. So at the institutional level, really, for prevention, we need clear, resourced and reviewed policies and a multi-pronged approach that really distributes the responsibility for academic integrity across all roles. We clearly need good training for everyone who works in academic integrity, training for all the staff so that they've got a really good awareness of what's happening in the area. In terms of detection, we need at the institutional level a much stronger role for our IT departments in monitoring and detecting anomalous activity. And we need better systems and processes for enabling us to know students at the institutional level so that we can identify, again, sort of anomalies as they arise. And then, as I said, we need regular reporting and monitoring of all matters to academic bodies and ongoing review of our processes in light of that data, that continuous improvement. And you might like to investigate, if you haven't looked at it already, you might like to investigate what Professor Phil Dawson from Cradle at Deakin University suggests, sort of a range of strategies from the strong at the top to the weak at the bottom for what universities might consider putting in place to support academic integrity. He calls this anti-cheating approaches tier list. Increasingly, if you see the top row, increasingly universities are looking to appoint centralised teams because, as you might have taken from this data, academic integrity is an increasingly specialised area with a lot to know and a lot emerging that you really need dedicated roles to be keeping on top of on behalf of the institution. In addition, you can see towards the top there advice about certain kinds of assessment tasks and technological mechanisms that can be used to help prevent and detect. So I'd suggest sort of exploring this and discussing this if you haven't already at ANU. If we come down to educators now and we think again across that framework of prevention, education, detection and management, key in the curriculum is to be using curriculum and assessment practices that minimise known risks, and there are a lot of these now published in the research, and really committing to the active inclusion, both social and academic, of international students. In terms of education, it's key that unit coordinators, teaching staff are supported to teach the knowledge-making processes in their discipline. Students clearly don't really know how to be producing what it is we're asking them to produce, and they clearly need more scaffolding in academic assessment. And there are central teams in your universities in the library and learning support that can really partner with you in this work. Engaging in regular professional development in methods for detecting and substantiating misconduct. This, I would suggest, is probably step one for an educator. If you're going to walk away from this session and do one thing, start educating yourself in methods for detecting and substantiating, serious forms of academic misconduct. It's a big learning curve, and there's a lot to know, but the awareness of those educators who are at the coalface is really, really critical. And then, of course, be aware of your institution's policies and procedures and how to consistently apply them in practice. So that's all for me. I've got my references at the end. I hope I've finished. I think I have finished with in good time to have some Q&A. So I'll stop sharing now and hand back over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Rowena. That was very enlightening for me. There's some areas I hadn't even considered, and particularly in that international versus domestic students thing. I think I've certainly heard that type of language being used, and it's really lots of food for thought for me on that one. Maria asked a really good question in the chat, was were international students involved in that survey as well? Yeah.
They were. So they are roughly, I think it was somewhere in the vicinity of about 20% of our respondents to the survey were international. So that was broadly representative of their proportion of the population in Australian universities. When we analysed the qualitative data, though, we only had the capacity to take the top themes. And so we're very mindful that the international student voice wasn't well captured in the most dominant themes. And so what we're doing at the moment is we've gone back to the data and we've now pulled out all the comments that came from international students and LOTE students, and we're analysing those to see what those groups said specifically, because we think they will bring a very different view to this.
Yeah, and there's all those things you don't even think of in gathering that data, like how people decide to verbalize their things will not necessarily be standardized as well. So it's really interesting space to learn about. So Would anyone else like to raise their hand and actually verbally ask a question, or you can pop it in the chat while we have Rowena as a captive audience. So one feature I do wish Zoom had, which is the like ... to say that people are typing. Sometimes you ask and you're just sort of waiting to see who's a fast typer, but it's not always so straightforward. I'll just see if anyone's raising their hand. I know we have some newly created positions at the university, as in an academic integrity staff member for different colleges and divisions, and it will be interesting to see what role research plays in their role as well, and looking at the ANU context as well. But I think it's very early days for those staff. Probably still getting around things. Just having a look. If anyone would like to speak, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute your microphone. Or you can pop messages into the chat and I can read them. Just waiting patiently. The Zoom world. Marianne's put some things in.
Good question.
That ADEs have sent through some resources for staff to accompany Academic Integrity Week. If they've not passed them on, ask them to send them through. Question. So this is from Marianne. Is there any research you can point us to around academic integrity and online exams in the COVID years?
The short answer to that is not yet. A lot of the good journals, you know, there's a long lead time in terms of publishing data. So I'm yet to see really strong peer-reviewed data come out about our COVID experience. But there have been a lot of conference presentations and there's been a lot of discussion. Anecdotally, universities have said that cheating rates went up during COVID. I think everybody said that they saw that at their institution. So I think we're likely to see that come through in the research data. We also saw, interestingly, Chegg, which is one platform that a lot of STEM students in particular use as a platform to cheat. Their share prices, I think, nearly tripled when we were all in lockdown. So if that's an indicator of an increase in cheating, you know, perhaps we can say it went up. One of the things that I know Phil Dawson has been vocal about in terms of online exams is that we haven't yet got any data about the efficacy of proctoring platforms. We actually don't know if they prevent or detect cheating effectively. But we are aware of a myriad ways that students can very easily hack around a proctoring platform and cheat. So I think they kind of provide a false sense of security.
It's a very true. I have teenagers and I know that they can go to TikTok very quickly and there's a series of comedic videos on how to get around the online exam software, and it's sort of like, it's literally a comedic video but a how-to video at the same time of how it's done, and the ingenuity is quite mind-blowing, but also, you know, quite sobering for us, like realizing what we're up against.
Yeah.
And even in New South Wales, they have a board of studies forum, which is board as in I am board of studies, and it's where they actually share their notes. So previous year 12s will sell their notes to the next year 12s, and they've kind of been engaging in this through year 11 and 12, and don't really see it as, you know, as plagiarism or doing anything nefarious. They just think, oh, well, this is me helping someone else and I'm going to get the help in the same way. So it is hard when that's the culture they have developed.
That's right. And there's a learning theory that's gaining traction in recent years called connectivism that basically says, you know, we can see that learners, one of the ways learners approach learning is to try and source information as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. And I think that's an interesting explanation as to what we're often seeing among students. They're sourcing the answers. The assessment's the same as it was last year. I have a solution. Why wouldn't I use this if this is the answer? So it is a slightly different mindset around it. I've seen a good question in the chat though about online quizzes, and I'm glad someone's given me the opportunity to chat a bit about online quizzes. If I was an educator, I wouldn't be setting online quizzes for anything but a formative task. It's clear there's Guy Curtis tweeted the other day that there's some unpublished data that he's hoping to publish soon, that I think over 80% of students they surveyed said they've cheated in online quizzes. That tends to be the culture. When there's an online quiz, students get together in the library and they do it together. And it doesn't matter how you randomize the questions. It doesn't matter how time limited. students will do it collectively. And so I think there's a risk in having any of your unit grade based on an online quiz. It just won't have any integrity, but they're fantastic as formative exercises, practice exercises. You know, that we shouldn't do away with them entirely, but I think there's a question as to whether marks should be attributed to online quizzes.
So there's a very long one here. If you want me to, I can read that and you can respond. I can only see a student number, a staff number, sorry, so I can't tell you who it is. But I was very interested in your point that educators don't feel their expertise is considered evidence in pursuing cases of academic misconduct. So how can that be integrated into the process while also balancing the need for students to have procedural fairness and an outcome that stands on actual evidence?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the things that we do need to do is we probably need to equip educators to be able to articulate their concerns more strongly. I have seen a lot of educators who seem certain, but they haven't been able to articulate in a way that can be conveyed to someone who hasn't got discipline expertise, you know, what the precise nature of their concerns are. So I think part of it is about upskilling staff in being able to articulate what their concerns are. Another thing I've seen work though is holding vivas or oral assessments as part of an academic integrity investigation. So allowing the teaching staff member to ask probing questions of the student that expose the components of the assessment that the student should be able to do but can't because they've outsourced it. So including vivas can help draw in that academic expertise as part of the investigative process. And again, then that allows it to be brought in as a form of evidence that's considered addressing that sort of procedural fairness question.
Yeah, that's a good one. And then Alison's got a good question about the research that you conducted. So was it looking at both undergrad and postgrad? And did you see any differentiation in their responses?
We did. We included students at all levels, but the way we phrased the question was, have you ever engaged in ... So it could well be that our postgraduate students were saying, yes, I've engaged in it, but they might have been thinking about something they engaged in as an undergraduate. So we didn't set a time limit on the questions, but I know that we see cheating across all levels. But it is typically, evidence does seem to suggest it's more likely in the early years, but certainly it does happen a lot in postgraduate coursework, and it certainly happens in HDR.
Great. And there's Jenny has a great point as well. Just a number of people have said that the greatest concern is question security. Your research mentions that students feel it is lazy to reuse questions, but given the work involved in writing a good question, it seems this is an essential practice for academics. Some suggestions about ways to resolve that.
I wish I had a way to resolve it. It's a really vexed issue because I am completely aware of the academic workload involved in writing a great question. But unfortunately, we need to assume now that the moment a question has been presented to students, it's out there in the public domain. It's out there. It's being circulated. Students have described teaming together with other students, and when they walk into exam, they each have a question number that they're asked to memorise. So they walk out of the exam and they write down the questions for the following semester's students. So they have these intricate, very, very organised systems for bringing those questions out of what we think is a secure environment into the public domain. So I think the only thing I think we can do is step back as universities and think about whether quiz questions, test questions, whether this form of assessment is still meaningful and useful in the kind of current landscape where we're trying to develop 21st century learners. I think in some discipline areas it is, but I think it's a much more complex question. I think requires us to step back and look at our learning outcomes, look at the purpose of our assessment, what we're trying to develop, and perhaps be thinking about more programmatic methods where you know, all the students' results aren't hinging on a test that we can't guarantee is secure.
Well, we are at the hour, and I appreciate that we're galvanizing your time, but it's been very insightful. I'm sure we could ask another million questions. I'm fascinated by the artificial intelligence essay writing that does my head in. But yeah, we'll have to save it for another time. They're getting lots of appreciation in the chat for everyone saying thank you for coming. This session will be up and available soon on YouTube on the ANU Libraries channel. So I can't promise exactly when, but it will be there. And then you can rewatch and keep engaging in this conversation, because I do think it is really a changing space, not just at ANU, but obviously everywhere. And just thank you so much, Rowena, for sharing your hour with us and your prep time as well. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.